So are you ready for some football? Well, if you're one of the many folks who just can't wait for the football season to get underway, it's almost here. The NFL's regular season begins on Thursday, September 8th. Now, some of you may remember that, well, I think it was 3 years ago, it was the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Football Hall of Fame was founded with 17 charter members. Among them were players like Sammy Baugh and Jim Thorpe. Players who helped change the way football was played. Shaped it into the game that so many in this country know and love today. Before before Sling and Sammy came along, football was mostly a running game, unlike today. But Sammy was so accurate in his passing the football that other teams and coaches began to notice, and before long, the forward pass became a very effective offensive weapon. And Jim Thorpe was one of the most famous athletes of his day. He was able to run fast, pass, catch the ball, kick the ball. The team he played for was the Canton Bulldogs. Thorpe became the first president of the NFL. And some of you may not know, Jim Thorpe also played 6 seasons of Major League Baseball. And he won 2 gold medals in the 1912 Olympics. King Gustav of Sweden honored him during the closing ceremonies in 1912 that year by saying, "You, sir, are the greatest athlete in the world." And how did Thorpe reply to this high praise? He simply said, "Well, thanks, King." Such a humble response from a man that many believe, many have labeled as one of the greatest athletes of the 20th century. My, how times have changed, though, in the world of sports. Especially in the NFL. If you watch a game today, pay attention to what happens when a touchdown is scored. Group hugs, high fives, smack down, dances, cartwheels, sit-ups, boat rowing, snow angels, worm crawls. This kind of in-your-face cockiness of some of the athletes. Well, it's become so bad. In fact, it became so bad that several years ago, the NFL actually changed the rules of football. And now teams can get a penalty. I think it's 15 yards, isn't it, for excessive celebration? Gee. It's enough to make you long for that good old days with Jim Thorpe and his humble demeanor. Jesus often spoke about humility and the pitfalls that come with pride. We see the principle is clearly taught in Scripture, and especially in this familiar story from Luke, where Jesus gives some very good advice about humility. And he tells those who are gathered around him listening that day, when someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you may come to you and say, "Give this man your seat." Then humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honored in the presence of all your fellow guests. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself pride, arrogance, narcissistic behavior. We see it displayed everywhere in our society today, don't we? And it's not just in the world of sports. How many times do the scriptures advise us to humble ourselves? Apparently, pride and arrogance was just as much a problem in Jesus' time as it is in our world today. Pride is often discussed in the Bible. It's not only on the list of the 7 deadly sins. I'll bet we've heard of that one, haven't we? It was made popular by Evagrius Ponticus, who was the 4th century monk. But pride has been referred to as the father or source of all other sins. The word pride appears 55 times in the King James translation of the Bible, and none that I can find suggests that pride is a positive thing or a positive attribute. Jesus teaches that humility is a virtue, one that should be cultivated and practiced. But what is our culture teaching our young people today about pride and achievement? Children and parents today seem to have this belief that anyone who goes to school deserves to have good grades. Anyone who goes to school deserves to receive good grades. Doesn't matter how they perform. In sporting events today, there are times when trophies are given out simply for participation. Not just for exceptional performance or winning tournaments. Basketball players, they want to go to prestigious universities not because they want a first-class education, but so they can play ball for a year or two and they can get drafted into the NBA. Let's see, where else can we find pride and arrogance prominently displayed in our society? You can find it all over television. How about the so-called TV reality shows? Now, if this is one of your favorite shows, I'm sorry. But the things that come to my mind are like shows like The Bachelor, Big Brother, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Marriage Boot Camp. Now, these shows are full of people who have become famous simply for their outrageous behavior, not for any real skills or achievements. Jesus makes a prediction that I believe should be heeded. Not only by the stars of sports and television, but by most of us. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted, Jesus says. We also have to be careful, though, how we label people. Not all people who become famous, who are in the public eye, or for some other reason become very prominently known in our society, not all of them are arrogant or self-serving just because they're famous. You know, running for the office of President of the United States will certainly make you famous, though not always popular. Just look at the 2 candidates we have running for the office right now. And not all people in political office are just out for fame and glory for themselves. Some really do view public service as just that, service. One politician that I believe fits into this category, and some of you, or probably quite a few of you, will remember when this took place. George McGovern. George McGovern, well, he passed away just a few years ago. But he will always remember for the election where he lost to Richard Nixon in one of the biggest landslides in history. Because he opposed the Vietnam War, Nixon's spin doctors painted him as a cowardly left-winger. But McGovern was certainly not that. He was a decorated bomber pilot from World War II. His staff at the time advised him to talk openly about his war experience, but like a lot of veterans, he did not want to do so. He described himself as the son of a Methodist minister, just a good old South Dakota boy who had been married to the same woman forever. What McGovern was, I believe, was a humble man. Now, I'll bet not too many of you know that toward the end of his life, he was awarded the World Food Prize, along with his longtime friend, Senator Bob Dole. Dole said of him in an article in the Washington Post that our most important commodity was our shared desire to eliminate hunger in this country and also in the world. Together, they worked on many programs in their time in office, such as the WIC program, food stamps. And these programs directly helped the poor and those who were in great need of food. Working together with later presidents, their tireless efforts led to programs that provided meals to over 22 million children in 41 different countries. Bob Dole, George McGovern, Republican and Democrat, both fought in World War II, both ran for president and lost in their elections, but they were certainly not losers. They quietly worked behind the scenes to feed 22 million children without blowing their horns or calling attention to the work that they were involved in for their own glory. I wonder if in our current political climate, if they would even be allowed to work together to solve problems, as they did so effectively only a few decades ago. Jesus certainly cared about feeding the hungry, as we see by his suggestion to those gathered at the table with him that day. He advised them to hold a dinner party and not just to invite their friends and relatives and the people who were sure to reciprocate and invite them, but to invite the poor and the needy and those who could not repay them. This advice hits home with us today, doesn't it? Don't most of us throw parties or have cookouts and we host dinners for our friends and our family members? We enjoy hosting them and then being invited to the dinner parties and the cookouts that they throw, don't we? But what if we were to have a party or a cookout? We invited some folks who we knew could really use a good meal. People who maybe we didn't know that well. How would that change the dynamics of the party? Are there other things we could and should be doing to address the needs of the poor and hungry? Not long ago, I was reading, while I got on the internet and started looking at Harris polls. Just a few years ago, there was a poll taken that said 59% of Americans now follow pro football. And a similar Harris poll taken in 2014 says that 35% of all sports fans name football as their favorite sport, with baseball as actually a distant second. Now, this is the highest number ever since they have been taking polls. Football continues to grow in its popularity despite allegations of doping, the risk of concussion, and prominent players who are arrested for abusive behaviors and even serious crimes. Michael Smith of NBC Sports writes this about football. It's not just America's most popular sport, it may be America's most popular cultural institution of any kind. Now, if we claim to be a follower of Jesus Christ and a member of the church, we ought to have a real problem with that statement. It's not that we should boycott football or any other sport, but we do need to put these things, especially in sports, in their proper places. First of all, we should not allow any sport to get in the way of our faith and our discipleship. That means keeping the right attitude towards our favorite sports. That means that we don't skip church to go to a ball game. Yeah, I know I stepped on a few toes, but I'm sorry. What's most important? We don't leave church early so that we won't miss the kickoff, the first pitch, or the green flag. If we truly are a faithful follower of Jesus Christ, we would not consider doing it. You see, it really is a matter of setting priorities. And here is how your priority list should read. God first, spouse second, kids third, job or career fourth, and you can make the list out from there. The second thing that we all need to work a little harder to make Christianity the most important institution in the land, not some sport. And if we are willing to skip worship for a ball game, what does that show others about us, especially those outside the church? How seriously are we really taking our commitment to Jesus Christ if we're willing to lay it aside for a ball game? If so, that claim they make about us, about the church being full of hypocrites, might just be right. Being a Christian in our world today is not an easy thing. No one said it would be. It will cause us to go against the status quo, or what may be popular. Faithfully following Christian principles often forces us to choose between doing what is popular and doing what is right. If we believe that Jesus was correct in his call for humility, then anything we do that helps other people without an expectation of compensation, well, that will be honoring for God. When we give of our time, our money without any strings attached, we are following Jesus' example. And it will demonstrate to others, especially those outside of the church, that God is first in our lives, not some sport or anything else, but that our priorities are in the right place. Make no mistake, humility is not a weakness, as some would have us believe. True humility actually requires a great deal of strength of character. I like what Rick Warren said. Humility, how he defined humility. He said this: humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. If we truly are putting the church and the things of God first in our lives, when we begin to do that, people will notice. They will see that we are faithful disciples of Jesus Christ by what we do, and the genuineness of our faith is what will prove to others that we are the real deal, a disciple of Jesus Christ, and not a Christian in name only. Let us pray. Loving God, there are many things in our lives that we love. We love sports. We love to be with family and friends and dinner parties and all those things. Lord, help us to put these things in their proper perspective, and remembering that there are many ways that we can honor you and show others our devotion as one of your disciples. Lord, help us to